Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Captions. We have a very special pleasure to have a quick interview with Bobby Seale, who was one of the founding members of the Black Panther Party from the 60s, and he is in Peoria to address an audience at the Bradley University, and he's also stopped down here at the African American Hall of Fame Museum for a quick tour. And in talking about Black history, Mr. Seale, how important is it for you these days to embrace it and maybe even learn?
Well, African American people's history, their heritage, etc., is reflective of a whole history of struggle, a history of struggle for constitutional, democratic, civil human rights, a struggle for economic parity, fairness, etc. If you read, understand, digest, know, and realize all the yearnings, the hopes, desires, and needs of all those who suffered, and many of those who fought and struggled, many who put their lives on the line, and if you really want to synopsize it, they were all struggling and yearning and advocating something like a future world of cooperational humanism. This is what we need. And this is what African American history is tied to. It's American history as well as African American history, and African American history is as well as is part and parcel of what we call American history.
How has the struggles of what you tried to do in the 60s with the Black Panther Party, how has it affected America overall, in particular the white race, and what has it done to change the perception of African Americans by the Caucasian community?
Well, one of the things you have to remember about the Black Panther Party is that one of our characteristics was all power to all the people. At least that was our main slogan, all power to all the people, not just black people. But we wanted to make sure that black people were never to be marginalized. We were about, as a young group of people in the 1960s protest movement, about organizing community, political, economic, and electoral community power. This is what we were about. We also vowed to stand up for our constitutional, democratic, civil human rights, whether the power structure liked it or not, as we used to say. Now, a lot of people try to say the Black Panther Party was a black hate group. How could we have been a black hate group when we had working coalitions, every day, face-to-face working coalitions with all of our white left radical buddies? We had working coalitions with the young Puerto Ricans, the young Lords, American Indian Movement, AIM, the young Chinese and the Asians out in San Francisco were coalesced with us. I mean, the young Chicano Mexican Americans, I mean, Cesar Chavez's farm labor movement, and the young Brown Berets. We had these working coalitions. We even did working coalition work with SCLC, particularly after Martin Luther King was killed. Dr. Reverend Ralph Abernathy asked me to do that. I'm just saying, the other characteristic of the Black Panther Party was coalition politics. This is largely what the power structure began to hate, particularly after I had organized 5,000 people into the Black Panther Party full-time, plus had broadened our organization with what we call the National Committees to Combat Fascism, of which many white people, black people, red people, whoever and whatever culture were part of that organization. J. Edgar Hoover and the politicians of this country ordered the police to come in and to attack every Black Panther Party office, particularly in the year of 1969 and early 70. Then it was the United States Senate that began to investigate what the FBI was doing. People don't know it, but that's what stopped the shootouts. I wound up at the end of 1969 with 29 Black Panther Party members dead. Police units in places around this country wound up with 14 policemen dead. I mean, they would come and attack us and we would defend ourselves, and some police would wind up getting killed too, because they had no right to attack us, because all we were doing was exercising our constitutional, democratic, civil human rights to organize, educate, and raise the conscience of our people. So that struggle is going to be left on what America was about, how America evolved, whatever the American democracy project is about, and what it turns out to be. One group, along with hundreds and hundreds of others and thousands of other people who are going to have to be referred to, the Black Panther Party will be referred to also as one of those groups in the 1960s and 70s who stood up for our constitutional, democratic, civil human rights.
And do you see those same type of needs today? Because there's still a lot of discrimination going on. There's still racism, although in some places it's still kind of subtle.
Actually, there's quite a bit of covert racism going on, particularly in the political arena. Code word messages and things like this. These kind of code word messages that politicians use, they're doing this to maintain control of the economics and maintain control of certain politicalized institutions that are also still racist. They hide the racism. But I would have to say this here. In the struggle of the 60s that Martin Luther King, SCLC, and other people struggled in, that the Black Panther Party was part of, SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, all of us, many, hundreds and hundreds of thousands. There was a time in this country, the police brutality that you see and hear of today, there was a time in this country it was 10, 20 times worse than it is now. Doesn't mean that we're supposed to relax and say we're not going to get rid of this last 1 or 2% that's going on. Yes, we got to get rid of it. There was a time when people were getting killed, shot, murdered, and terrorized. Just in the 50s and the early 60s, they were getting shot, killed, murdered, and terrorized, and not one white racist policeman or whoever was even put on trial. Nowadays, we can see a lot of courtroom trials where these racists are going to jail. We have to intensify this. I'm saying that to get rid of this racism, we have to restructure, reorder, put new legal frameworks up to begin to weed racism out. It may take a few more decades to do it too, but we have to be vigilant about that. And people, black, white, blue, red, green, yellow, and polka dot, need to come together on all levels to try to make sure that we ultimately wipe out all forms of racism, bigotry, chauvinism, etc. We just got to be vigilant.
You mentioned that there's a lot of murders going on back in the 60s. Again, not as bad as now as it is. But what about the problems, the fact that African Americans and minorities are, through gangs and drugs, are killing each other? How do we get the message across that it's bad enough that those in power and control are trying to kill you and get rid of you, but it's bad enough you're trying to kill each other?
The problem is that if we, the people, do not learn and understand how to evolve what I call community-controlled economic development projects and gear these economic development projects at jobs for youth, jobs and a lot of good on-the-hands, on-job training for youth, complete with a lot of other education that they need to understand what their lives are about and how they fit into community. If we don't do this kind of stuff, we're never really going to truly get control of those grassroots inner urban cities and other places in the communities. We're not going to get control from these youth, from these drugs, etc. The gang fighting and all this kind of stuff, these kids are running around here with guns, killing. We got to figure out a way to get them guns, one, out of their hands. Two, we got to figure out a way to put up what I like to call, all across this country, what I call environmental renovation youth jobs projects. Renovating old cars and converting them to electrical automobiles. Since 83% of the public says that they want to do something about the environment, let's pay some of these youth and sell these cars back. That's the type of economic development community control program that could be very financially self-sufficient and doesn't need any government tax monies. Renovating some of these old houses, particularly I live in Philadelphia. We have 35, maybe 36,000 abandoned houses and properties in Philadelphia. Well, I could put probably 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 youth to work in Philadelphia with professional carpenters, professionals, builders, roofers, drywallers, etc. And for every one professional I got, I could hire 4, 5, or 6 youth. You see what I mean? Like apprentice. You see what I'm getting at? Sure. Renovating a lot of this old houses, paying them $7, $8 an hour. If you stay in the program for 2, 3 years, you can get all the way up to $10 an hour. Plus, you could have some educational training program and introducing them to the communications technology with these kind of environmental renovation youth jobs projects. So until the people begin to understand what they want out of these politicians, you want to get that first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years pieces of money to begin to evolve some financially self-sufficient economic community control, community empowerment control, economic development projects. Hire these youth in and put it under control frameworks where the youth not only have a job, but they learn. So you can start hiring youth from 16 years of age all up to 28 years of age. You could put a dent in the amount of youth that's running around here, falling in the pitfalls and traps of dope, falling in the pitfalls and traps of drug entrepreneurism, which is all interconnected and interrelated with the dope, the killing. We could put a dent in that. But until we understand that and begin to do that, I think we're going to still have a large part of this problem.